Distinguished colleagues, I am pleased to present my report following a visit to Guatemala on the 15th and 16th of December at the invitation of President Alejandro Giammattei to participate in the leadership transition process along with the OAS Secretary General Luis Almagro. The visit was also in furtherance of the request by this Permanent Council in its resolution CP/RS 1240-2476/23 of the 12th of December 2023 that I, as chair of the Permanent Council and the OAS Secretary General, quote, request with urgency the consent of the government of Guatemala to accept a mission of good offices by the Permanent Council as soon as possible, invoking Article 18 of the Inter-American Democratic Charter, unquote. In my meeting with President Giammattei, accompanied by the Secretary General and his team, the President informed me of the successful completion of the leadership transition process. Some members of his transition team were present at the meeting, and each of them participated in the dialogue. The President described the transition process as an historic achievement for Guatemala. He emphasized that transparency and cooperation had characterized the process, which culminated at a closing ceremony on December 6, 2023, at which Secretary General Almagro was present. President Giammattei was keen that this Permanent Council be advised that notably 66 files containing substantive government facts covering 53 institutions were meticulously organized and delivered, and that additionally 45 folders were uploaded by the government's Transition Committee through a QR code that was made available to the President-elect Bernardo Arévalo and his transition team. He was adamant that the inauguration of Bernardo Arévalo and Karine Herrera as President and Vice President of Guatemala will take place on January 14, 2024, as scheduled, and that invitations had already been conveyed to heads of state and government to attend the inauguration. During the meeting that the Secretary General and I had with Vice President-elect Karine Herrera, she said that there are challenges in getting information from the government side. But nonetheless, the Semilla Party is preparing for the assumption of office. She advised that the Semilla Party has already chosen 14 ministers, of whom 8 are women, overcoming the challenge that many women are reluctant to enter political life because of fear. However, she complained that the public ministry continues to fabricate cases, trying to delegitimize the electoral vote and to prosecute persons, including 2 students who were arrested on Friday, 15th December. For the Council's information, I point out that 3 days later, on the 18th of December, the criminal court declared that the cases which were brought against the 2 students had no merit and ordered the arrested students to be freed. This affair prompts questions about the motivation of those in control of the public ministry. But it also speaks to the residual principle in the legal system that right must be corrected, though to what extent that exists now will be left to be seen. On a positive side, Semilla's legal representative, Juan Guerrero, who was a member of the Vice President-elect's team on the day we saw her, advised that on Thursday, December 14th, the Constitutional Court had issued a decision in which it safeguards the election results including any effort by the public ministry to jeopardize it. He also stated that a judge of the 9th Pluripersonal Criminal Court had issued a decision on the 15th of December which obligates the public ministry and the national police to respect the transfer of executive authority to the officials elected in the 2023 elections. I will elaborate on this point later in this report when I discuss the details of our meeting with representatives of the Constitutional Court. However, another important matter was raised by the Vice President-elect and Samia's legal representative. They both expressed concern over the human rights violations of activists, journalists, students, and other members of civil society by the public ministry. In this connection, the legal representative stated that while the new executive will respect the independence of the judiciary, they regard Article 14 of the Public Ministry Law to be unconstitutional because it vests unfettered power in the Attorney General without accountability, and also prohibits removal of the person holding that office except upon conviction for an intentional crime. They fear that if Article 14 is not declared unconstitutional, the public ministry will continue its illegal acts. Consequently, in October 2023, they filed a case on this matter at the Constitutional Court and are now awaiting the court's decision. Colleagues, given the history of the public ministry's arbitrary behavior, this case is one to which the Permanent Council may need to pay close attention even after the transfer of executive power. Now, Secretary General Almagro and I also met President Hector Hugo Perez Aguilera and Judge Leila Susana Limos Arriaga of the Constitutional Court. We had a very candid session with them in which constitutional and legal issues were carefully considered. The two senior judges expressed their concern over the labeling of the situation in Guatemala as a coup d'etat. Indeed, they took objection to it. They were clear that such labeling is inaccurate, given that the country's institutions are operating and functioning properly. The representatives of the Constitutional Court also stated that on October 31st, 2023, the competent body, the TSE, officially declared the electoral results as final, and that consequently, in their view, the view of the Constitutional Court, the results are, quote unquote, unalterable. They were firm that the Constitutional Court has been very clear that there can be no legal tool or loophole that can be used to amend the TSE's officialization of the election results. They pointed to their own decision issued on December 14th, 2023, in a document entitled Proceedings 6175-2023, Constitutional Court as an Extraordinary Court of Protection, by which they published the following rulings. 1. The Constitutional Court establishes that when an electoral process is in progress, a political party cannot be suspended. 2. The decision of a criminal judge cannot affect the electoral process. 3. The investigation by the public ministry cannot prevent the completion and results of the electoral process. 4. Demand that the Congress of the Republic and its directing board are obliged to guarantee that all elected persons take their positions in accordance with the certification of the results made official by the Supreme Electoral Tribunal, the TSE. 5, invites the Congress of the Republic to act in accordance with its function of preserving the democratic regime of the state and carry out all necessary acts to guarantee that the persons elected to the executive and legislative branches take office. 6, all authorities are warned that in accordance with their functions, they must comply with the last stage of the electoral process. And 7, any persons who do not comply with the rulings will incur civil and criminal liabilities. We also discussed with the Constitutional Court a case in which the Supreme Court of Justice ordered that the Congress set up an investigation committee into TSE corruption related to the purchase of a computer program for the transmission of preliminary results. As a result of the Supreme Court's order, 108 congresspersons voted to remove the immunities of the TSE magistrates. The representatives of the Constitutional Court stated that their court cannot interfere in these investigations because it is not a constitutional matter. It is a case against persons for a criminal investigation which is outside their jurisdiction. They were steadfast in their position that they are the guardians of the Constitution, a role they carry out diligently. They stated robustly that there is, quote unquote, no constitutional breakdown in Guatemala, and they wanted to be clear on that point. They also said that they fully expect that the transfer of executive power will assuredly take place on January 14, 2024, given that anyone who tries to obstruct the process would be subject to criminal and civil liabilities. Turning now to the Permanent Council's request that the Secretary General and the Chair of the Permanent Council, quote, request with urgency the consent of the Government of Guatemala to accept the mission of good offices by the Permanent Council as soon as possible, invoking Article 18 of the Inter-American Democratic Charter, unquote. I advise that President Gamate readily agreed to accept such a mission. Foreign Minister Mario Bucaro Flores confirmed this agreement in writing, and his letter will be appended to this report, which shall be circulated to all delegations later today. In the letter, the Foreign Minister stated his government's agreement for a visit to Guatemala by, and I'm quoting the letter now, a group of ambassadors that can take place from January 12th to 14th, 2024, as agreed by both parties and in accordance with Article 18 of the Inter-American Democratic Charter, unquote. Additionally, I advise that President Gamate express his wish to address the Permanent Council directly on or about January 10th, 2024. The President underscored Guatemala's commitment to the OAS Charter and the principles of democracy that binds its member states. A formal request for him to address the Council on or about January 10th, 2024 will be submitted by the Permanent Mission of Guatemala to the OAS. In concluding this report, I wish to extend my thanks to President Gamate for the invitation to visit Guatemala and for the valuable time that he dedicated to exchanging views with me and the Secretary General. I also express my appreciation to the Secretary General and his team for their support during this visit. I also thank most sincerely the justices of the Constitutional Court for providing explanations and clarity on the complex legal system in Guatemala. I extend my gratitude to Vice President-elect Karen Herrera and SAMIA's legal representative Juan Guerrero for the fruitful exchanges we had with them. Now, as I draw toward the conclusion of this report, I would like, if I may, to make a few observations. First, this visit's success was enhanced by the cooperative effort between the two organs that are accountable to the General Assembly of the OAS, the two organs being this Permanent Council and the Secretary General. Second, I record the admirable role of the Secretary General since August of this year in accompanying the transition process to help ensure its achievement. Third, I am encouraged by the resolve expressed by the representatives of the Constitutional Court to ensure that there is no unconstitutional alteration of the constitutional regime that seriously impairs the democratic order in Guatemala. Much responsibility for the nation's well-being falls on the judges of the Constitutional Court, who, in carrying out their responsibilities as protectors of the Constitution, should be given every support by this organization. And finally, I reiterate our collective and unwavering commitment to supporting the people of Guatemala through this transition period and indeed even beyond it. I thank you all for your attention.